The Great was born as Frederick II and born on January 21st, 1712 in Berlin, Prussia. He was the oldest living son of Frederick William I and Sophia Dorothea of Hanover. Frederick's education was controlled by his father but was encouraged by his mom and sister. Frederick became bitter towards his dad. Frederick learned to play the flute, and his father thought that he should be learning how to make a strong army. Frederick was publicly embarrassed and abused by his dad. The feud led to Fred attempting to flee to France, but was imprisoned at the fortress of Custrin. Fred was employed as a junior official for more than a year. 1733, Fred married Elizabeth Christine of Brunswick-Beveren. In 1734, he had his first military action under Commander Eugene of Sèvres against the French army. This made Fred happy, and his father died on May 31st, 1740. Fred became king and wanted to rule by himself. When Charles VI died on October 20th, Maria Theresa was the heir. Fred attacked Silesia after this. The most important part was to have the Russian support for Maria Theresa. Fred hoped to get part of Silesia, but her refusal led to war. Fred got his first victory at Mollwitz in April 1741, which meant nothing. In October, Maria was threatened by France, Spain, and Bavaria, which allowed Fred to get Lower Silesia. Habsburg beat France and Bavaria, so Fred invaded Moravia. In 1742, he got a victory at Chotzewitz in May, so Maria gave most of Silesia to Fred by the Treaty of Berlin. Augustus II joined Maria and attacked Silesia, but Fred's army beat them. On December 25th, 1745, the Treaty of Dresden was signed and Silesia was under the Prussian rule, which ended the struggle. Silesia was most developed and it had good military, which made Fred the most successful ruler in Europe. Maria wanted Silesia back, and she signed peace with France and Spain at the Aix-la-Chapelle in 1748. Empress Elizabeth, who got the throne in 1741, and Chancellor Elkesi Bestuzhev Ryamin hated Frederick. In 1755, Britain signed a treaty with Russia which gave Russia military help at its Baltic provinces. Fred tried to flee in January 1756, and in May, the Franco-Russian ally took place. And Fred thought there was going to be an attack, so he invaded Saxony and Bohemia. This caused the issue of morality of preventive military action. The 7 Years' War was a life-or-death situation for Frederick. Fred's invasion of Bohemia ended after a defeat at Kollin in June. He beat Zorndorf and Liegnitz and Torgau against the Austrians. Fred was beat by Hochkirch in 1758. The losses made him have thoughts of suicide, which then led to having a weak army. January 1762 was when Empress Elizabeth died, and Peter III was a fanatical admirer of Fred, so they signed an armistice, following by a Russo-Prussian treaty. The death of Elizabeth diminished Maria's hopes for getting Silesia back. The Treaty of Hubertsburg was signed on February 15, 1763, and the wars ended, and the Prussian reputation was greater than ever. Prussia lost 180,000 men, and also some of the territory was devastated. Partition of Poland. With this, Prussia got the Polish province of West Prussia, but not Danzig, but got Brandenburg and Pomerania. In January 1771, Prince Henry went to St. Petersburg, made the partition possible. Habsburg joined in also. Fred was in charge of it and desired it, and the policy was mainly Prussian, and it was Fred's greatest diplomatic success. Economic and social policies were conservative to Fred. He admired his father's work and acknowledged the debt owed by him. Fred thought of the kingship as a duty with obligations to make simple laws, be prosperous, do what's right, and protect his country. Fred claimed that his power was only within the limits of the law and couldn't rule in any irrational way. Under his rule, the administration was the most honest and hardworking in Europe. Frederick William I created the General Directory and the Provincial War and Domains Chamber. The Directory was the main organ of the government. The Silesian administration was efficient, and the resources helped Fred in the 7 Years' War. The judicial system appointed the judges in higher courts after they'd passed a rigorous exam. The government's refusal started to show right before the Prussian collapse of the Napoleon Army in 1806. Fred wanted to increase the power of his state. He wanted education and culture, but this came second to making a strong army and getting financial resources. Fred got 83,000 men, and when he died, it had turned into 200,000. but only 80,000 were Prussian. The struggles from 1756 to 1762 confirmed that Fred's beliefs of huge financial demands for serious conflicts. He experimented with taxing tobacco. He didn't plan them out very well, causing the damage to the economy. His economic policies were in the Mercian tradition. Fred's officials and ministers dominated all the local government in the country, and the state couldn't exist without it. Fred prided himself on being the leading representative among all others. He made lots of mediocre poetry and composed music. Fred's culture was French. He wrote and spoke it, using German only when needed. He didn't like the German culture, and Berlin never mattered to him. Gotthold Ephraim Lessing, a famous German writer, called Prussia the most slavish country in Europe, as well as Carl Philipp Emanuel Bach reluctantly. Fred's religious tolerance was genuine, which made him an enlightened ruler. The General Education Regulations of 1763 tried to create a primary education, but with the limited resources, it wasn't as important. But this was the most effort that had been seen in Europe of this kind. Fred continued to build the foundations left by his father. He made the ethos of duty, effort, and discipline stronger, which is now one of the major political structures in Europe today. Frederick the Great died on August 17, 1768 in Potsdam. He ruled Prussia from 1740 to 1740. I think it's supposed to, I don't know, 1740. He was the third king of Prussia. He was an absolute monarch, and he built a French Rococo palace, Sanssouci. The territories were bigger, the armies became stronger. Early on, Frederick showed great military knowledge, and his army was well respected and imitated. He spread his ideas and strength, and they became influential to Europe. Catherine II and Joseph II were all influenced by Frederick the Great. Frederick saw a change in the revolutionary change in the importance and prestige of Prussia, which has said to have implications for the history of Europe.